Okay, I'm rolling.
Because holy cow, does that sound awful.
Are we ready?
Yeah, just about. No Tess, I guess. And with those notes of music, we are live on Cinema Smackdown, CJLO.
I'm always tempted to go out and get a coffee whenever we run our theme music, because it just takes so long.
It does just take so damn long.
It's an endless track. It's like Revolution number 9. Just keeps going and going and going.
It is January 20th. We are in the midst of what I like to call Snowmageddon in Montreal. The scariest, deepest, nastiest, coldest bit of snowstorm we've had in quite a few years.
I woke up to the radio telling me, don't go outside, you'll die. And I thought, oh, well, I guess we're doing a radio show anyway.
Yeah, and we are doing the radio show anyway, despite this. Our co-host doesn't seem to have made it. I don't know if she's on her way or...
We have sent the St. Bernards out for her.
We shall see what comes of that, come what will, as it were. But at the moment, we don't know. I hope she's okay.
She may be in a live situation right now if she crashed somewhere along the way. I'm sure there's cannibalism. Yeah, there's cannibalism happening on the 103 bus right now as we speak.
Yeah, I buy that. I took the 105 here. It was an interesting, messy, slow-going with... I would say there was a few moments where either the bus was close enough to the cars that it was behind or vice versa that I thought to myself, somebody is making some poor choices driving now. We were inches away from cars with no stopping power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I saw one genius making a U-turn on Monkland, so that's always good in this weather.
Indeed. Always a good idea to get out there in your car whenever the weather is impossible.
And do a U-turn directly into snowbanks in front and behind.
Yeah, I saw a little note from, it's not AAA in Canada, is it CAA?
Yeah, CAA.
I saw a little note from them yesterday saying that they had done 4,400 calls yesterday, the day before, and they were expecting to do more than that in the next day or two. To which I just think, get that word out so that most people would think to themselves, do I really need to drive to Walmart today? Because if the answer is no, you might want to...
If you have an option, take your bicycle.
Oh dear. Yeah, so here we are. We are doing another episode where we talk about the most overlooked films of 2018, and we should probably wrap this theme up at some point before 2019.
Yeah, we're working towards it really hard. I should mention that this will officially be our 13th YouTube episode, since I've been uploading them to YouTube, although we've done many episodes past that, stretching back years now.
Well,
if you're one of our listeners on the radio and you want to go check us out on YouTube, you can look me up, Shane Simmons, on YouTube, and you can see what we talk about in the commercial breaks when we plot other people's murders.
Yeah, which I wasn't fully aware of when we started on this show, and therefore there are a few statements that are made in those early episodes.
They're slightly incriminating.
I would like to go back and edit a touch.
I'm sorry, it's already out there. You can't memory hole it now.
Yeah, I'm not that worried.
It'll come up at the tribunal. Believe me. They're making transcripts as we speak.
Are they? Oh, dear. And as we've been speaking, I have been building our ad playlist, which we didn't have enough time to get to before the show because our previous DJs were in here right to the last moment, keeping me away from the computer.
Damn them. So, I'm sure our sponsors now for today include an ice cream company, right? What else do we have? We need to run a Mr. Plow ad, I'm sure. That would probably be best on Today of All Days.
Oh, well, I just got a note from our co-host, who is in fact on her way here, but is enjoying the weather so much, the bus that she's on has stopped to appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Like I said, that's a euphemism for stop for the cannibalism to begin.
But luckily she has a whole bus full of people to pick from.
Well, yeah, we'll see. If I had to bet on that particular battle royale, I would bet on Tess.
Yeah, I see it that way too. Well, all right. Well, on the off chance that she makes it here, and you know what? I should just double check with her if she's actually seen the movie we're going to talk about, and if not, I guess we could launch into it without her. This is way to sound super prepared on the air.
Wow, texting while running a radio station. Class act.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, we'll wait quietly.
Why don't we all wait quietly while I formulate...
Meanwhile, I can try and calculate how many cannibalism victims Tess is already up to. She'll be Dave Foley in that Kids in the Hall sketch where he goes around sampling one passenger after the other rather than just eating one.
Indeed.
The one where he was the sole survivor of a 20-minute delay.
Yeah, I remember that. There was quite a sketch. The good old Kids in the Hall, worth the effort of jumping onto YouTube and watching a few of their sketches.
What other winter-themed cannibalism movies can we talk about? Certainly Cannibal the Musical.
There's definitely a number of them. I think Larry Fessenden made one, but I can't remember what it is. Of course, there is that great Guy Pearce...
Oh, Ravenous.
Ravenous,
yeah.
Robert Carlyle movie, which teaches you that you too can become a Marvel superhero if you just eat a little human flesh. That is the movie that the central premise is: if you eat people, you will become super strong and immortal. That's just a given in this world.
Well, that's science. There's also a whole host of films involving people being eaten in winter conditions by non-humans. I think our favorite one of that is Frozen, not the animated musical, as I have to keep clarifying for people. It's like, no, this is the one about the people trapped on the ski lift who...
Shane, I'm gonna mouth for you the same words many of our fans who only love the musical would say. Let it go.
I'm just trying to be clear here. I have not even seen the musical, so my credentials as a film buff are refuted by that admission.
Via the magic of text messaging, Tess has in fact confirmed she did watch the movie that we were coming here to talk about. So let's give her...
I can't wait to hear her opinion in the last 5 minutes of the show.
It may well be what happens. We'll give her... we can vamp for 20 minutes about many of the other movies I've wanted to get to for the last few months. And we'll run at
none of which I've seen, I imagine.
We'll run at the clock and see what happens. No, you haven't seen any of these. But they're all worth mentioning. But you've seen your own movies of late, have you not?
Not much. I mean, stuff for the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, we could do the quick recap that I had planned to close out the 2018s, which is to remind everybody of the 10 movies we have talked about in the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
Just really quick. So, I mean, we did cover these on other shows, but this is a more comprehensive list of the movies we think are overlooked for 2018. The films that really were worth seeing, but didn't get a huge push.
They weren't part of the hype machine.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we started off by talking about Under the Silver Lake, which I'm still baffled by and in love with in a certain way, because it is a challenging, difficult, super long, beautiful movie that we recommend highly. So
the unholy merging of Hitchcock, Raymond Chandler, and David Lynch. Yeah.
And more than, I mean, there's an...
I think those three cover.
But there's an off-kilter sense of humor that is not in any of those people's work. Perhaps the strangest David Lynch comedy moments.
Hitchcock has its moments too.
All right, you're right. It is a pretty good unholy merging of those three. But again, like I really like this movie and I recommend it, but I recommend it with that huge warning of this film is so strange. You better be prepared for certain levels of frustration if you're planning to jump into it.
And if you're not prepared, we are ready to receive your angry letters.
Send those angry texts and emails to... I don't have a clue what the name is, but we do have a website and a Twitter account, apparently.
Or you can leave really rude comments on the YouTube channel.
So after we talked about Under the Silver Lake, we also mentioned Upgrade, which Shane and I both support wholeheartedly as a fantastic exploitation, mild sci-fi, uber-violent movie. With,
right. But much slicker than your usual exploitation film.
It looks absolutely fantastic, considering that the entire commentary and every interview I've ever heard with the director is how they had no money to make this movie.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it.
No. It looks like a fully realized vision. It is definitely one of those. Much like Apostle, Gareth Evans, another one that it looks great. I don't know what they...
Yeah, fantastic, moody period piece vibe to it.
Exactly. And yet another movie that we did talk about that they brought up as... It has consistently been brought up by the people who made it as we did not have the money to make this movie was Hotel Artemis, the Pierce film. Which I just listened to an interview with him yesterday about it, and he mentioned there's an opening scene where the main character, known as the nurse in the movie, played by Jodie Foster, slides open a compartment to look at what was written in the screenplay as a pile of future tech. And in the movie itself now is some very mundane equipment and a label maker. And I love the fact that he said in this interview that he loves the idea that the Jodie Foster character was obsessed with this label maker and was forcing Dave Bautista's character to just walk around all the time and keep labeling everything as her employee.
You know, I have to say, I think a lot of films would benefit from much smaller budgets. It forces filmmakers to be innovative and come up with interesting ideas to smooth over some of the rougher spots.
Well, the only budget cut I'm interested in is the one that renders your CGI budget at 0.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you're telling your people on the day, we're never going to be able to fix this in post. We have to get it right now.
Right.
Because the level of fixing that's going on where people are transforming into animated characters just so they can mouth the proper line of dialogue, or you can smooth over a wrinkle line on somebody's lip is
there's so many
astonishingly obvious in some cases.
There's piles of money, like money that you could have shot an entire film for, that were being shoveled into these $200 million productions just to fix little vanity things, like, notoriously, my favorite example being in the recent Star Trek films, how apparently Chris Pine has a scar on his neck that he's a little self-conscious about. So they spent money removing that digitally. And there are other things like Zachary Quinto's wig was a little crooked in a couple shots, so they fixed it digitally. It's like, no, it's a wig. Fix it on set, you lazy bastards.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun when you know someone who worked on that production in some capacity. That you've got
little inside information of it's not all going towards spaceship battles. It's going towards a lot of stupid crap.
The fewer spaceship battles created entirely out of CGI, the better. I look back at movies like Star Wars from 1977, or even Star Trek. I look at the models they were hand building and sliding across on wires, and they're a million times more convincing than anything in the modern films. There's just something believable. There's something a lot more believable about explosions that actually make noise in space in the 60s and 70s than there is today.
Star Wars is one of those films where if it had been made today, there probably would have been a lot of post-production CGI just going, everything's a little dirty. Why don't we just, clean this up a bit? Those droids are looking kind of shabby. It's like, no, that's the whole point of this universe. It's a shabby lived-in universe.
Well, believe it or not...
If you don't make it shabby, it looks like the prequel trilogy.
Believe it or not, just trying to fill some time and wait for Tess to possibly show up, we've gone all the way to our first commercial break. So here it is, everybody. I know you've been looking forward to it.
Mr. Plow!
They're not going to be too long. 1 minute.
All right. Time enough for me to get another minute of recovery after... You see, you were smart. You took the bus here. I walked through this and
I actually considered telling you to take a bus just on the way here, but actually by the time I got on the bus, it kind of calmed down a little.
Well, the wind wasn't as bad as it said it was going to be. They were saying on the radio, it's going to peel your face off.
Mm-hmm. It was all right.
I was okay.
At noon it was terrible, but by 1, it was all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're already back. Just another 10 seconds.
Might feel different on the way back home, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's less of an issue than arriving here alive. And we are back. And we are back on Cinema Smackdown, CJLO 1690, AM radio, AM, where the cool kids hang out. We didn't do any introductions today. My name is Michael Brody, and I am joined today by...
Shane Simmons. Barely made it here.
And via text, we're joined by Tess McCrae, perhaps in person at some point later.
Listen closely and you can hear her texts.
Yeah, there's a little tiny bit of beeping going on here and there. We were summarizing a few of our favorite overlooked movies that we have already covered as we wait for Tess to show up, and
so we can get to our grand finale.
I did want to do a rundown of these anyway, so it's not like we're doing this for no reason. But at any rate, moving forward, and I do actually have a few films I want to touch on that you're never going to watch, but another movie that we touched on for quite a bit last week, I think it was last week, and both of us have strong feelings towards, was The Sisters Brothers, which was an offbeat Western starring Joaquin Phoenix, Jake Gyllenhaal, who's the other brother? Oh, John C. Reilly.
Yeah.
And Riz Ahmed, which is a charming, strange Western of the...
Yeah, I was talking about it, saying that I watched the trailer for it, and it had misadvertised or falsely advertised the film as a comedy.
Right.
Which it isn't. It has a sense of humor, but it's very dark, grim sense of humor. It's certainly not a John C. Reilly comedy. However, there was a second trailer that I have seen since then, and that does a much better job of trying to capture the mood of the film.
I should check that out. I don't ever watch trailers before seeing movies because I see every movie, so it's kind of redundant.
Yeah, sometimes it's just academically interesting to see how the hell did they try to advertise this film.
Afterwards, it's always interesting to see what was the, let's be clear, sales campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the idea, is how are we going to make our money back from this? And of course, as we know now, this movie cost about $30 million and made about $6. So they definitely failed to find their audience. Which is
it's one of those cases where we've made a very unmarketable film. Let's hand it to some ad guys, and they will openly lie to the public in the movie theater, saying, "Hey, come and see this. This is the mood," and it's not the mood at all.
Right. Another movie that we touched on last week was Downrange, as I like to pronounce it, or perhaps completely wrong, Ryuhei Kitamura film. And Shane and I had a bit of a chat about this after we talked about it on the air. Have you warmed up a bit to this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm not remembering it badly, but it's one that I still remember my feelings in the moment to the point where I don't think I'll be showing it to anyone. Because I do run my weekly movie night thing where I curate films for people, try to make them watch stuff. It's like, yeah, you've probably never heard of this, but you should probably see this film. I don't think that's going to make the cut for me.
Right.
Just because there's enough elements of it that didn't quite work for me. Namely, I wish the characters were doing smarter things to extract themselves from the bad situation they find themselves in.
Right.
Because it's one of those survival porn type movies where people are just in a horrible, horrible situation.
I just think if you're looking to see a movie that is made by somebody who is an absolute master of cinematography, along with timing, tone, I mean, we're not really looking at a movie with major dramatic acting performances. There's a lot of screaming and running. You're not going to learn a lot about these characters.
And cowering, don't forget the cowering.
A lot of cowering. But being in a moment, in a situation, I think he captured something kind of amazing. And as we talked about, the last few acts in this movie, the moments, the things that happen, they're either going to upset the viewer to such a degree they're going to be angry they saw this movie, or they're going to stay with you forever. Because this is an absolutely uncompromising, violent movie. And for my money, that alone is worth seeing. I mean, if you can stomach something as nasty as this. Yeah,
well, Kitamura tends to... He's a nasty Japanese director. Not as nasty as Takashi Miike by any means. But, he runs hot and cold for me. But when he's on game, he's capable of really spectacular work. And I still highly recommend his earlier film called Azumi, which is a samurai film that he made when he was still making films in Japan. Now he seems to be permanently part of the Hollywood grindhouse.
Well, I guess that's it for the major ones that we've covered that were worth mentioning. I mean, of course, we did an extended piece on Bad Times at El Royale, which you're a big fan of. And I was lukewarm about, despite thinking that there's a ton of great stuff in that movie. I was still just lukewarm about it. We also quickly touched on the movie Mute, which we all kind of hated but couldn't stop thinking about and obsessing about. So that sort of tells you something.
It's a fascinating failure of a film.
Exactly. And yeah, those are the majority of the ones that we've talked about that were really overlooked, didn't get enough, they weren't really spoken about enough in 2018. So I'll touch on one or two that I've seen that are even less talked about, that meant something to me, that one or two I haven't even mentioned to you, Shane.
Okay, hit me.
Well, there was a movie I saw a couple of months ago called Cruise, as in to drive your car slowly. Cruise.
Oh, that's the one with Al Pacino in a gay bar, right?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay.
It's been remade.
Okay, good.
By James Franco, if you haven't heard. No, this is a film by Robert Siegel. Robert Siegel was the writer. He came to fame because he wrote The Wrestler, the Mickey Rourke movie, the Ricky Mork movie. I kind of like how that sounds. Maybe I should switch that up.
Register that stage name with actor right away.
He wrote The Wrestler about 10 years ago or so, maybe it was 2007, and people noticed he had a really singular voice as a writer. He didn't direct that movie. That was directed by Darren Aronofsky. But going forward, he did direct a little movie called Big Fan, starring Patton Oswalt.
Ah, yes, okay.
Also, have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that.
It's quite good.
Mm-hmm, yes.
It's certainly intense. So it was with some surprise that I noticed this little tiny movie turn up called Cruise about a guy and his friends in the 1980s essentially just driving around in their car, sort of like a very somber version of American Graffiti, hanging out in the city. And these guys have some bad habits. They boost car radios, and they pick up girls. And it felt like such a nothing idea for a film until I sat through it, and I realized the guy making it, he just put so much love into this movie. Now, none of these characters are good people. They're not folks I really want to hang out with, and yet he somehow made them compelling. It basically centers upon the leader of this trio of pretty dumb guys whose future is going nowhere. They've all got really good hair, and they drive this nice car. They zip around. They're the envy of everybody. And the main guy meets a woman in the middle of all this who agrees to go for a ride with him. And the rest of the film is just based on whether or not their relationship will go anywhere. It's a pretty calm drama, and yet there's not a minute of this movie that I didn't want to know what was going to happen next or how it was going to be presented. It's just gorgeously filmed. It feels like something that could never be made today. That's the thing. When I was watching it, it felt like it could never possibly be made in this era.
Yeah, because the thing it's most reminding me of, the way you're describing it, is like two-lane blacktop.
It's calmer than that.
Okay,
That's the thing. It is a real character piece, just hanging out with these people, but it's lusciously filmed. But it honestly, if you didn't know better, you'd swear it was released in 1983. It just has that tone to it. But when I tell you the pedigree of the guy who created it, that he did The Wrestler, that he did Big Fan, then you suddenly realize, he also wrote The Founder, the Michael Keaton film, which is also excellent in terms of how the information is passed along to you, because that's a biopic about a guy who was a pretty devious scoundrel, is the nicest way to put that. But he's still compelling, and it's the same with this. It's characters I wouldn't really want to know in real life, and yet, not only that, but there's a lot of moments in Cruise where you expect the dramatic arc to explode, to get bigger, and it often goes the other way. The calm, centered version of the story often wins out, which makes it feel like a different kind of movie. So, I give that a huge recommendation, just in terms of seeing something that is such an easy, smooth watch that is compelling. There's not a lot of movies like that these days. Everything is it's amped up. You're watching these non-stop explosion films.
Yeah, well, we're constantly recommending films to each other, saying, "Oh, watch this. It's slow."
Well, slow burn can be a beautiful thing, as long as it's good, as opposed to you're just waiting for it to get started ever.
Yeah, when we tell each other, "Oh, no, this is great. It has pacing."
Exactly.
That's code for everyone else to go, "Oh, boring."
I also briefly touched on a movie that I saw a couple weeks ago to you, which was still a 2018 movie called Wildlife, which was written and directed by Paul Dano, the actor. Now, when actors direct their first movies, there's often a tendency for them to come in and make an acting movie, to make an entire film based around big acting moments. Kevin Spacey's made a film like this. Matt Dillon's made a movie like this. A lot of actors, when they get that directorial debut, they just want to, if they're in the movie, they want to give themselves the biggest moments their careers ever had. And if they're only directing other actors, they just want to make those people shine like every 30 seconds is an Oscar-worthy performance. Mm-hmm. Those films are rough.
Yeah, there's a problem of people in Hollywood trying to wear a different hat and not doing it very well. And the actor-made films tend to not be very visual at all. They're based entirely in performance. There's rare exceptions of actors who become directors who can really pull it off. Charles Laughton was a great one.
That's the one, though.
Charles Laughton, I would also say Danny DeVito is also...
But Danny DeVito did it multiple times, whereas Charles Laughton is a one-and-done.
He's a one-and-done, yeah.
Night of the Hunter, which is widely considered to be one of the great films.
Yeah,
By an actor, by entirely an actor's work. He did one film as a director.
And it's a visual tour de force.
Yeah. It's also got really good tone. And also has perhaps the weakest last act of a movie. Well, that's not true. Not the last act. More like the last 8 minutes.
The closing moments of that film are not as satisfying as you would hope.
You basically are left to decide for yourself what happens to certain characters because the movie is made in an era where they can't show you.
Yeah, exactly. It's Robert Mitchum is one of the greatest villains of all time, and he's up against a shotgun-wielding Lillian Gish. And you just want a climax that's worthy of that Battle of the Titans.
Well, you want to see him get blasted in pieces, which, I won't spoil the movie, but in
55, I think.
55, there's not a lot of scenes of people getting shot into pieces with shotguns. There's a lot of off-screen things.
Oh, I'm sure some bright Hollywood person will remake it.
Well,
with lots of CG.
Getting back to Wildlife, the Paul Dano movie, this is a film starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Carey Mulligan and what I'll call a newcomer, Ed Oxenbould, who's about 17 in this. So they're the parents. Gyllenhaal and Mulligan are parents of a young man. They live in a small town. And the weird but very compelling premise of this movie is that Gyllenhaal's character gets fired from his job and decides he's too good for most lines of work and that people don't appreciate him. So he instead takes a life-threatening position that pays nothing, more or less to just prove he's a man, and disappears from his family's life. He's not gone forever necessarily, but he is more than likely going to be killed in this job, which everyone knows. They try to talk him out of it, but he's so set in his mind of what he wants to do that he pretty much destroys his family dynamic. And the movie is this harsh drama about what happens when a mother and her child are left alone all of a sudden by somebody's... It's almost a movie about this man's pride, which is so strange. It is a very compelling film. It is very odd because it is incredibly hard to figure out what people's motivations are in this. It is slow to tell you what's really happening, but it is an actor movie by an actor, I will say that, but it's one of the pretty good ones.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty great little film. Let's do another quick ad break, and when we come back, we're going to start talking about Gringo, whether Tess shows up or not.
Yeah, how much time do we have to talk about Gringo?
Oh, I'm doing this wrong. We were only supposed to do station ID here.
Oh.
I'm doing it backwards. That's alright.
Alright.
I forgot it wasn't... I'm not going to do the other ad. We're just going to do 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. We'll just do that one.
Alright.
And we are back on CJLO 1690, doing a little show I like to call Cinemageddon. Well, I don't like to call it that. Tess called it that, but I'm just running with it.
Thump, thump outside
Thump,
the door.
thump outside.
Does that announce Tess is arriving?
I don't know.
Probably not.
Somebody else.
No, I think they're moving stuff.
Oh. See, we get all excited about things, and then we don't quite get to what we wanted. Well, I'd say
Tess still hasn't eaten a bus driver yet in her cannibalism fest.
Let's launch into our main movie of the day. Now, one of the things I asked my co-host to do was to figure out what they thought their best or favorite movies of 2018 were ultimately. And
we'll never know from Tess.
We might never know from Tess, but we will know from me. Because little technical difficulty with my microphone.
Broke the station again,
as they sometimes do here. There we go. So let's talk my favorite movie of the year, and there is no doubt in my mind, ever since I saw it, I want to say back in April or something, my favorite movie of 2018, by a long shot, is the movie Gringo. Gringo is a movie directed by Nash Edgerton. Nash Edgerton is
Australian, yeah.
He's an Australian filmmaker. His brother Joel Edgerton has become quite famous in his own right as a director and also as a leading man type actor. He sort of flitters in and out of different projects, sometimes playing a minor character. And yeah, I mean, there's one you haven't seen yet, but he's the lead male character in Red Sparrow.
Okay.
He's also the lead male character in Warrior, I think it was called, the movie with Tom Hardy where they're doing MMA fighting. It's the two of them. They kind of co-star in that one.
Mm-hmm.
I say it's called Warrior, but I'm actually not sure what the title of that movie is. So that's the Edgerton family. Nash Edgerton, as far as I am concerned, and I believe you are too, Shane, is most famous and most important a director as the director of a short film called Spider.
Yeah.
Spider was a movie that was presented to me, it's about 12 minutes long. It was a short that was presented to me as the greatest short film ever made. To which I immediately say, well, you've probably ruined it for me just by saying that, because nothing can ever live up to those kind of expectations. So I would say, all right, fine, I'll watch it, but now my expectation is that it won't be nearly as good as you said. So I've watched the short film Spider, sat through it, you know, and as you do when you're halfway through something, someone says it's amazing, you're like, well, whatever, this is fine. I don't see the point. By the time that short was over, my whole world was changed. I had a deep appreciation for this man as a filmmaker, and I didn't say it in the moment that the film ended, but within a week, I was telling other people, this is the best short film I've ever seen. So again, it's Nash Edgerton's Spider. It's online. It's everywhere.
It's just a tiny little film about a well-meaning boyfriend who pulls a small prank on his girlfriend, and it goes not so well.
It goes not so well.
There is also a sequel. It should be mentioned.
I don't even want to bring that up. Honestly, I think that it does Spider a great disservice to point out the garbage little.
See, I think the sequel is just fine.
Ugh, just fine. Damning it with.
Anyway, look it up if you like Spider and want to see the continuing adventures of that character. There's another film called Bear.
At any rate, I like the fact that he made a film called Spider, and I go from Spider straight to his big. This is pretty much his big American movie. He did make one other Australian film, but it's a much
did he?
Yeah, much smaller picture. And this movie is called Gringo. I saw it a few months ago. It stayed with me. It definitely won out at the time as by far the best movie I'd seen in the year thus far. But as the months have gone on and the other movies have appeared and as 2018 has ended, Gringo has remained at the very top of my personal list of movies that meant something to me, that I felt something while I was watching. So, let's talk a little bit about Gringo. Shane, you also saw it recently.
Yeah, I've now seen it 3 times.
Yeah, I have also seen it about 3 times. It's one of those movies I'm kind of delighted to show people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very rewarding rewatch, I find. And so Gringo, it stars, among other people, it stars Joel Edgerton, Nash's brother again. It has Charlize Theron in it. But the real lead of the movie is David Oyelowo. Now, if I'm pronouncing that name right, it's a miracle.
I wasn't even going to attempt it myself, but...
David Oyelowo plays a character named Harold, and I will probably continue to refer to him as Harold from this point on, because less dangerous. Basically, the movie opens with 2 dirtbag executives of a company who learn that their employee, the one that they had just recently sent to Mexico to do some business, has been kidnapped. There's a little moment at the beginning where they just sort of realize this has happened. Mm-hmm. And then we are quietly introduced to all of the plot points that will lead up to this kidnapping.
Yeah, we rewind to 2 days earlier. And we see Harold's unhappy life as middle management for this company, where he's put upon, and is sort of dimly aware that there may be a merger coming and the axe may fall at any time.
Yeah.
His finances are in ruins, his marriage is not doing well.
Yeah, and Harold is probably going to be pushed out with this merger. But his boss, Joel Edgerton, keeps assuring him...
His boss and supposed friend.
Yeah, keeps assuring him that, we'll take care of you. And his method of assuring Harold that he's going to take care of him is by telling him a short story, an allegory, if you will,
right,
about apes. I won't repeat it here. You should see this movie. Everybody should see this movie. But it is a very strange allegory, and in no way would make me feel better about my position at the company. It almost pretty much is a "why don't you just shut up" short story.
Yeah. And it is an allegory certainly worth paying attention to because it pays off very well in the film.
Yeah. Well, there are three.
There are three. Yeah.
There are three allegories in this movie. 3 moments where the film sort of pauses and someone tells you a 1-minute story that they've heard that has some bearing on the plot of the film, and it's
always about animals.
It's always about animals. It's very interestingly structured. Everything plays out. So, I mean, what else can we say about this movie? There's the main story.
It is a serpentine kidnapping story.
Yeah, and it's also, I guess it's worth mentioning, this is a very comedic crime drama. So it is a drama in that all of the events that happen are taken very seriously, but everything that happens is a slightly humorous way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I would not call it a comedy, but I was smiling through most of the scenes and enjoying how things played out. And Harold's reaction to almost everything that happens is so interesting. He is such a delightful
He is one of the most charming lead characters I've seen in a film in a long time.
And he's a massive loser.
Yeah, that's it. He's a loser who's just struggling like hell to survive and get by and maybe possibly come out ahead of the game. Yeah, but it's constantly in doubt.
We all just really, really want him to win, succeed, survive somehow. He's an adorable person. That's the thing. It's so rare that I watch a movie where I'm so charmed by somebody. So, yeah, the Harold character is essentially sent to Mexico in this to do a job. How do we put it? Why do they send him?
Well, specifically, his bosses are coming with him on his trip to Mexico. He's been down to Mexico before. Mm-hmm. What's unusual is they're coming with him because he's in the dark about what they're doing with their pharmaceutical company down there. Mm-hmm. And they want to... basically, they have been dealing their drug to a cartel boss on the side for some extra cash. And now that there's this merger coming up, they need to stop that so that everything is clean and above the board. And they have to explain this off the side to their head of the division down there in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to explain to them, you can't just cut off a guy like this.
Well, you can't just tell the cartel, thanks for doing some business with us, we're done now.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some point we get to meet the guy who runs the cartel, who is a character who is so bizarre and delightfully violent and yet humorous and obsessed with pop culture.
Well, specifically he's obsessed with the Beatles.
He feels like a character invented by Tarantino that had to be put aside and placed in another movie. And I don't mean that in a negative way. He's wonderful.
No, I certainly don't want to do that thing that people do. It's like, oh, it's a crime film. It's kind of quirky and weird. Yeah. It's Tarantino-esque. No, it's not.
It's its own thing. It's absolutely its own thing. But I did really love that character, and I liked his strange questions he asks people. He's always ready. This crime cartel boss is always ready with a quick pop culture quiz for you. Which was pretty delightful. There's also a couple of other characters who are essentially 2 drug mules. A young, well, I want to say American couple, but one of them's British. So it's
Australian.
Oh,
actually,
Australian?
The sleazy guy is Australian.
So it's Harry Treadaway and Amanda Seyfried play this couple who she's unaware that
she's the wide-eyed innocent
going down to Mexico to drug mule a couple of pounds of something, but he is this nervous boyfriend type who's convinced his girlfriend to take a quick trip for some reason. And they just sort of intersperse their story throughout Harold's story. And they meet up once or twice throughout the film. Just touches. They touch on each other's stories without being overtly heavy-handed with it.
Until they do merge in a major way.
But it's still little things as opposed to their stories joining and staying together. It's just there's little bumps where they touch.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, once Harold gets to Mexico, it becomes apparent that he figures out, he actually has a moment of doing something smart, and he 100% realizes his bosses are screwing him over.
He starts to realize how bad his life really is.
Yeah.
Domestically and at work.
Exactly. Everything comes together at once, and Harold realizes he has nothing essentially left to live for. And so, he takes it upon himself to fake a kidnapping. The kidnapping that we saw in the opening moments of the film, or we saw evidence of the opening moments, it turns out Harold has faked the entire thing, and he is trying to profit from this. So
now we're only covering the first half hour of the film here. I should mention
absolutely.
This isn't super major spoiler territory, and I don't want to spoil the whole film for people. But
we're not going to get all the way to the end.
But this is we're just talking basic premise of the film.
But once you realize that Harold is going to take the initiative and try to change his fate, the movie really hits a certain kind of gear where things begin to happen. There's a domino effect, and once the bosses realize he's been kidnapped and that they are now on the hook to pay a ransom of sorts, the boss realizes he doesn't want to have to do that. So he contacts the last important character of this movie, a character played by Charlotte Copley. He is the lead in, what is the name of that horrible...
District 9. Yeah.
Yeah, he came on the scene with District 9 and has been seen here and there throughout the years, often playing a heavy. And in this case, not that different. He's still playing a very capable but complex character.
Yeah, he's kind of a guy who used to be a heavy, and he's trying to turn his life around.
Yeah, he was a mercenary at one time in his life, and now he is a humanitarian and an eco-warrior. And he has all of these projects he's trying to fund. It turns out that the Joel Edgerton character is his brother, and he phones him and he says, "Hey, you used to be a mercenary. I need you to come and do a mercenary-type job for me." To which he responds, "There's no way I would ever hurt anyone again. I am a pacifist now." And Joel Edgerton tells him, "Well, I'll pay you a lot of money that you can then spread about your causes." So he eventually... Well, look who's arrived just in time for a commercial break. Why don't you situate yourself and you can leap into our conversation about Gringo.
Will do.
We have basically summarized the movie up to the point where the Charlotte Copley character shows up, and I was explaining.
Angel or whatever?
He's the mercenary character.
Oh, the brother.
The brother. So, all I was saying, and we're going to go to commercial break in about 40 seconds, is that once the Charlotte Copley character agrees to take this job to go and help Harold, to essentially remove him from the kidnapping situation, everyone realizes it would just be a lot easier if they simply had Harold killed. And when they recontact Charlotte Copley's character and tell him, "Hey, the mission's changed, you should probably kill this guy," he does not want to do it. Because at this point in the movie, he's run into Harold, and they've become buddies. And that's when I fall in love with movies, when the two strange characters meet and kind of join together and become sort of best friends, or people who really have a common likability. But now Charlotte Copley is faced with this, wait, should I kill this guy? And this adds a huge amount of stress and wrinkles to the already existing complex plot. And we'll get into what everybody thought about all of this when we come back from this last batch of messages. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm
Well,
glad that you made it down
right
there.
on time.
I'm sure
on
you're
time
really
for
happy
this
to
part of
have suffered the journey for...
I actually really enjoy the blizzard, so I'm okay with it.
I enjoy it as long as it doesn't keep me from getting to the thing I'm getting to.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I'm glad you made it. We just summarized the film. Without, getting too bad about it, but we said who the main players were, who all the actors are who played them.
Yeah, well, we'll try and get to more general opinion.
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
yeah.
You can leap in with whether you liked or hated it, and we'll go from there. We vamped a little, but I got through a few of the films I wanted to mention that I hadn't been able to get to
What did you
previous
mention?
episodes, so that was good. And we have 10 seconds, not even. Oh, I guess I'll give you a microphone too. Why not, right?
Why not?
And we are back. This is Cinema Smackdown on CJLO 1690. And for our final act of the episode, we are joined by Tess, who did survive
Hi, everyone. Is my mic on?
It is in fact on. Everything is on. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now.
All right, that's just a matter of turning up our headphones. We have been talking about, for the last 3 episodes, the most overlooked films of 2018. And finally, we've been talking about my favorite overlooked movie of the year, which is a little movie called Gringo by Nash Edgerton, starring Joel Edgerton, Charlize Theron. I'll try again. Let's see how I do here. David Oyelowo. Is that about right?
I think that's right.
That's about right. Who plays Harold? Let's just call him Harold. And this little crime comedy caper, which we summarized in the last bit before the break.
And we've established we've both seen it 3 times now. Tess watched it last night. And so, Tess, do tell us, how much did you hate this film?
I didn't hate it. Shockingly, I for once am not in complete opposition from you. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was the greatest film of all time. It was cute. I liked Harold. I liked David Oyelowo. Did a really good job, and the character was really sympathetic. And I thought that Charlize Theron was a bit much.
She is playing an absolute caricature.
She is despicable in this movie.
She's very nearly a femme fatale in this.
Yeah, she certainly has that element of it, but she is also relentlessly a horrible person.
Yeah, it is. I kind of loved that.
I don't know. I liked the character, but I just didn't love Charlize Theron doing it. I don't know. I found her a little bit flat in some places where I would have wanted her to be not flat. So
I feel like her haircut was more important to her than her performance.
Well,
that's definitely
such
true.
A businesswoman haircut.
Well, she did produce this film, so there's no way you were recasting her.
I mean, this is a caricature movie. Just about everybody is a pretty extreme character, from Harold being such a likable loser to his boss being such a conniving douchebag.
Yeah.
She's essentially a femme fatale businesswoman. Amanda Seyfried plays the most innocent person that has ever lived.
Existed in the history of the universe.
Exactly. Although the most complex and layered character in this is Charlotte Copley, who is a weird, I used to be a bad person and I'm trying so hard to be a good person now, but don't tempt me to go back.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked him in this.
Yeah, you could have hung a whole film on that character.
Yeah. Which is why I love how much we get of him in this. Every time I see him, I want a little more. I found his arc perfect. Delightfully perfect. I've never liked that actor in anything before. Not really. I don't know if you ever saw it, but the recent, last 5 years ago, remake of the A-Team TV show.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
He plays Murdoch, and it is a flavorless performance. There's just nothing there.
Well, to go with the flavorless film.
Yeah. So, I don't know, what else can we say about Gringo without spoiling it? It is, Shane and I were talking about the fact that anytime you do a little bit of crime and a little bit of comedy and it's a bit quirky, people just automatically call it a Tarantino film, which
Tarantino-esque,
yeah,
but no, I wouldn't call this Tarantino-esque by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
It's not really stylized enough, I would say, and it doesn't have as much of the tongue-in-cheek thing. It definitely has a bit of it, but it's not really. It doesn't take it to the extreme. In fact, I think I would have liked it better if it had gone a little more extreme with those little things. It was a little bit like, it was a little bit too normal movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but when you take it to that extreme, what you wind up with is Bad Times at El Royale, which is precisely what I had problems with when I watched Bad Times at El Royale. I just thought, this just feels like everything Quentin Tarantino would have done with this movie. It isn't directed the way he would have directed it, but it still feels like the ultimate ending for every arc of story in Bad Times at El Royale. Feels like, yeah, it's kind of the go-to Tarantino. This character gets shot when you don't expect it, and this musical cue falls here, and then everything catches
too many
fire.
Tarantino films, I think.
Well,
I mean, if you're replacing Tarantino with typical Tarantino endings with typical kind of movie endings, what are you gaining from that equation?
This is certain.
You could argue that someone needs to be making good Tarantino films because Tarantino is not making enough of them.
I don't know. I'd say his last movie was the best film he's made since Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, well, he's not exactly prolific, though.
No, but that's fine. He's said he's only making 2 more movies and he's quitting.
Yeah, he keeps saying that.
Yeah, he said that 100,000 times.
Yeah, he'll quit to that same retirement home with Steven Soderbergh. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to Quentin Tarantino finishing his movie career and doing his 13-episode television series that, at least that gives him a chance to breathe a little bit.
Is that what he's doing?
Oh, that's what Soderbergh's
that's
done
what Soderbergh
repeatedly.
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
Yeah, I think that fell flat in this room, Michael. Keep it relatable for the audience,
Keep it
okay?
relatable. Don't mention Soderbergh. That hack. At any rate, it turns out that in a pretty calm year, which was 2018, in terms of movies, it was really light for me personally in things I liked. Gringo was by far my favorite film.
I think that's very extreme, but sure.
It is. I understand what you're saying, and on any other year, I would have expected about 5 movies to come ahead of it in terms of what I fell in love with.
I will say that I watched Gringo on my laptop while I was cleaning my apartment, so it wasn't exactly the fully immersive movie experience. So maybe it might be that I was missing pieces of it.
But you did see it in 3D though, right?
But of course in 3D. I was wearing my home 3D glasses.
Well, we still have 8 minutes left. Why don't you two tell me, to the best of your knowledge, what you think the best movie of this year was? And God help you if you say Hereditary or Bad Times. Are you going to say Bad Times?
I'm going to say Hereditary.
Don't say Hereditary.
Not Hereditary.
That's in my bottom 10 from this year, but I know some people like it. At any rate, why don't you two give me your impressions? What do you think the very best film you saw this year was?
To be honest, I really have not seen that many films that impressed me this year, or that blew me away, or that I even enjoyed.
Right.
I've got a lot. To be fair, I have a lot left on my docket before I close out the year. But far and away, we've already kind of talked about this quite a bit. But far and away, the movie that delighted me, made me excited, and made me happy that people are making movies was Into the Spider-Verse. So
yeah,
I'm going
isn't that
with
crazy?
It's crazy.
It should have been so disposable.
I know.
It's my number 2. So there you go. And Shane?
Well, you've already forbidden me to pick Bad Times at El Royale, so I will go with my emergency backup choice. And say, maybe just because it's so fresh in my mind, but I really do appreciate...
Was it A Quiet Place?
Oh.
No. Nor was it The Bird Box. No, I was going to go with what we talked about last week, I think it was, which was The Clove Hitch Killer.
Oh, wow. All right, that's a screaming endorsement of that movie.
Yeah, well, like I said, you forbade me to choose Bad Times at El Royale, which is actually my favorite film of the year.
I also really like Bad Times at El Royale.
I feel like you got that out just now. I'm glad that you at least touched on something else. Look, the thing is, I liked Bad Times at El Royale, but it fails me as a movie. When you like a movie enough that you kind of don't like chunks of it, it becomes a bigger disappointment. Bad Times, I am desperate to see another Drew Goddard movie. I really want that guy to make another film. I just don't want him to make another movie where characters end on the kind of notes they end on in this, where I just go, oh wow, that is so on the nose. There was so many on the nose moments in it that just made me, they wore me down by the end. By the end of that movie, certain
I don't know. I mean, I think the movie had flaws, but if we're talking about 2018 movies, it was a cut above most other movies that were made this year.
It absolutely is. It's so weird to be arguing against a movie that I think everyone should see. I just don't want it to be singled out as so great when I think it really needed work. It's a strange position to be in. With that strange review I keep giving it, I still recommend everybody see it. It is incredibly enjoyable. Bad Times is a much better Tarantino movie than most Tarantino movies have been in the last 20 years. So there you go. That one I will fully say is a Tarantino movie. It is way too close.
Disagree. Strongly disagree.
All right, then.
And I will say, I'm looking forward to seeing Under the Silver Lake again. Because that was... I was very intrigued by that film. We've gone on it at great length here without Tess to go, ugh. So we don't need to cover it all over again. But I'll be interesting to see what my opinion of it, if it holds up for a second viewing.
It is a very strange second viewing film. I skimmed it when I wanted to talk about it a few weeks ago just to give myself a sense of it. And it is so weird to realize, wow, these were the choices that you made and hung on to while you were editing this film. Because some of it is just so left field.
I'm not entirely sure that film was edited.
It is a little...
There's a lot of stuff in there.
But to be clear, it is expertly shot and cut and looks great. And we've said this before, it's probably too long, and yet there's nothing in that movie I'd cut. Nothing. There's not one scene that I thought, oh, this scene's terrible, it should go. Plenty of scenes in that movie are, I kind of don't know what's happening right now. But it's great. You know, like what I wish David Lynch did. I wish his films were more like that. It
does remind me of David Lynch. Good point, Michael.
Yeah.
Also, I hate most David Lynch things.
Yeah, but we've already established that you haven't seen any good David Lynch movies. Because when we did the list, it turned out you'd seen none of the ones I liked. Which I thought was funny, because if your entire history of David Lynch...
Well, we all know you're the biggest Dune fan there is, right?
Oh, my God. That Denis Villeneuve remake can't come soon enough. Let's just hope
that happening?
Yes, this will be the third feature adaptation of Dune, because it's worked so well every other time.
It's always worked so well.
Well, one was a TV miniseries.
Yeah, but it's... Right. What I mean is it's just another lengthy adaptation.
Right, yeah.
Not to mention the fact that there is a 2+ hour documentary on the fourth.
Yeah, or what would have been the first adaptation, yes.
Which is the Jodorowsky Dune movie.
Which would have been crazy, because all his films are crazy.
Well, it's always great when someone offers you $100 million to make a movie, or whatever the equivalent was at the time, and your immediate response is, fine, I'll take your money, but my son, who has no acting experience and will be terrible in this, is going to be the star, and I have no wiggle room on this. My 13-year-old son is going to star in this movie. I don't care what you say. Your investors can all go to hell.
Well, Jodorowsky's always had a bit of a god complex. So.
It's just such a great way to start negotiations. I will not bend on this one impossible thing that will ruin this film.
Hey, I'm the guy who made El Topo, damn it.
Exactly. There are a number of other movies that I liked this year that I don't have time to talk about today, but we'll filter them in, I suppose.
We will never talk about 2018 again after this.
Well, if we had, if Tess had her way, just to get rid of Under the Silver Lake, she would bury this whole year. Which
it's not the only movie I want to get rid of, guys. If I hear one more person put A Quiet Place and Hereditary at the top of their movies of 2018 list.
Well, join us again next week when we will most likely, not for sure, but we will most likely be talking about the cinematic masterpieces that have come out of the M. Night Shyamalan factory.
Oh boy.
Because the release of his new film brings new meaning to flawed central concept.
Are you saying that we're doing a Shyamalan episode next week?
Perhaps. It depends whether or not either of you
into the Shyamalana universe?
Whether either of you see his latest and greatest masterpiece, of which I will hold my opinion on until we have an absolute...
Oh, yeah.
I think I can smell your opinion.
About this movie.
I think I can smell your opinion from here.
It's rare that something makes me seethe at this level. Well, we've got about 40 seconds left, so I think this is a good time to say goodnight, everybody. I will be hosting trivia tonight at Grumpy's. I'm sure I'll see hundreds of people there, as the weather is the best I've ever seen for this city. Tonight. As I do every Sunday.
I hope someone shovels a path for those rats on Bishop Street.
It will be very interesting to see if a single person shows up tonight. Shane, you still write books, don't you?
I do occasionally. Check me out on my author page on Amazon.com, Shane Simmons. And also check Shane Simmons on YouTube so you can see our behind-the-scenes moments on this very radio show that you just listened to.
And Tess, you're out there in the world living your life. How's it going?
It's going pretty well.
Well, when you're ready to plug something in the future and we have more than 3 seconds left, we can do that. But until then, this has been Cinema Smackdown. Good day to you, sir.
Good day, sir.
Well, I'm really happy you got here to voice your I
my
barely watched this
opinion.
movie opinion, but my apartment is cleaner. I do like the fact that even though you admit at the end, you were like, I kind of sort of watched this. You were still like, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I enjoyed it.
It's pretty good, I guess. It's pretty hilarious. So I managed to do the playlist before we got here. And it stuck to what I thought it would be, as opposed to it went wildly off course, or something went horribly wrong. We almost did the ad break at 1:30. I did the first ad and realized, oh yeah, this is just the station ID part. We're supposed to talk through this. Oh, it's the first time in forever that we didn't do that gag where I said the name of this